Danielle, I think it took the screen share off too.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Will you tell me if it shares the wrong screen?
Yes, I will. It was when it was sharing.
Howdy, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to let people trickle in here for the next minute or two before we get started, but appreciate your time and patience.
Is that the right way, Catherine?
Don't know yet. Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
On the first try.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar about the Howard Ashland city land sale. So I think everyone's had a couple minutes to join. We're having some technological issues, so I apologize for that. But basically, we don't have a lot of land that is city owned of this size in this area of the city. And so we have some pretty specific selection criteria that we're presenting as we present this piece of land for sale to the public. And so we're just going to go over some background about the piece of property, our selection criteria. We're going to go over the process and then open it up for any questions that you have. We were asking for questions in advance, but we didn't get any. And so just know that if it's really technical, we might follow up in writing after this meeting rather than being able to address it right now. But that's generally our plan. So my name's Danielle Kreider. I'm a North Region planner. I'm joined by Catherine Hurd. She's the lead North Region planner. We're both with the Department of Planning and Development. And then I'm also joined by Esther, Tom, and Sam, who are all with our Department of Housing, who will talk about some particulars related to this land and project later on in the presentation. So here are some pictures of the property looking south from Howard Street and also looking southeast from Ashland Avenue. You can see that it's currently the Hello Howard Community Garden. Here's an aerial of the site. So you can see it's very close to the Howard station with red, purple, and yellow CTA service. It's right across the street from a community center. It's very close to a grocery store. It's near a middle school, across the street from a park. And so it's a very well-located piece of property. So we're excited about how it could be utilized to benefit the community and future residents in several different ways. It's currently zoned B35, which is one of our business and commercial districts. It's at the densest density level of the business and commercial zoning districts outside of downtown. So we don't anticipate that the property would have to be rezoned in order to be developed. We're asking for about 2.2 million in terms of listing price based off of a recent valuation. The property is about 1 acre. It's in Alderperson Maria Haddon's ward, which is the 49th ward, and in the Rogers Park community area, just south of the Chicago border to Evanston. And so when we talk about how we would pick a potential buyer for the site, there's some selection criteria that's universal to the city's land sale process, which I'll go over really quickly. And then there's going to be some selection criteria that we've developed in conjunction with the community and with Alderperson and based off of city priorities and past planning efforts in this area that would just be specific to this particular property. And so you see that there's point ranges for each of these, but generally speaking, zooming out because you guys are able to find this all on our Tri-Block Builder website, we're looking for evidence that the team is going to be able to actually execute on what you're proposing. So we're looking for comparable experience and partnership with folks that have a demonstrated ability to build what you guys are proposing on the piece of land. We're looking for, financial feasibility. So again, if we sell this land to you, will it actually be built? And so there's going to be information requested around financing and budgets accordingly. We will consider how much you are proposing to pay for the land, though this is offset by, how much it meets our development needs and redevelopment goals of the property. So know that there's kind of a caveat there. And then public benefits. So there's several that are listed here. And then again, we've kind of drilled down more into this in our site-specific listing sheet. And then the last one is conformance to plans and community engagement. So we'll look in just a second at recent planning done in this area that has, again, informed what we've asked for specifically on this property. So back in 2021, the Metropolitan Planning Council did a bunch of outreach with the local community about like how could we utilize the site, how could we activate the street frontage on Howard, which is a commercial corridor very close to a CTA station, and maybe maintain a portion of the existing community garden on site. And then the One Howard Economic Recovery Plan, which was just finished earlier this year, was completed by the Rogers Park Business Alliance. It focused more on like short-term economic development type interventions on Howard, but really drove home the need for more density on Howard, more people on Howard, more activation and development on Howard. So not having, this vacant land right up on this commercial corridor, and then kind of noted the changed economic conditions from 2021. We need a feasible project here, though we are, of course, excited about the community garden component staying on the site. And it recommended a mixed income and mixed use development. So when we looked at this, and in a moment, we'll look at a development scenario that sort of informed our thinking, because we were like, well, we could ask for the world, but we want it to be feasible and we want it to promote the community priorities and needs here, right? And so we decided the most important things for the Howard Ashland site, knowing that it's just an acre, would be one, to have a limited equity cooperative housing component of about 20 to 40 units, maintaining a publicly accessible but likely downsized community garden component, and then compliance with the City of Chicago's neighborhood design guidelines, which addresses the location of height, density, and massing, probably locating that more towards Howard Street and stepping it down as you go south on the property. And it also gets into like high quality and contextually appropriate building materials, and an active ground floor use on Howard, as I mentioned earlier, because we want that pedestrian activity and vibrancy. And so these are some very conceptual renderings. We're not saying that this is how you would have to lay the site out, but thinking through like what is possible, what can actually fit here, what's feasible. We realized that, if we want more massing on Howard and stepping down to Ashland, that this is kind of a general massing that could be feasible. So probably with higher density mixed use right up on that Howard street frontage with the ground floor commercial, and then probably not having ground floor commercial on Ashland, and then having a smaller community garden piece right at the tip of the property at Rogers and Ashland. And so there are a lot of assumptions that were made here. We're assuming that you would maintain B35 zoning, which allows up to a 5 floor area ratio, or FAR, which doesn't include parking. Again, that's the most dense you can get outside of the downtown area. This would allow 230 to 340 units, depending on the ratio of efficiencies to 1 bedrooms, just because of its proximity to the Howard CTA station. We assume that this would include the 20 to 40 limited equity co-op units. And then there would not be a maximum height that would apply to the property if you sought a plan development approval which requires city council approval. And so that way you can kind of consolidate more of that height on Howard and step it down, as I mentioned before, as you go south in Ashland. And so we have a lot more nuances and regulations to that zoning district. So here's a QR code to that if you're interested. It's also just 17-3, the business and commercial chapter of our zoning code. And so you can read through the specifics there. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Esther to talk about, when we say low equity co-op component, what do we mean? And then also they're going to talk through ARO, or the Affordable Requirements Ordinance compliance for this sort of development concept. David, was Esther able to be promoted as a panelist?
She hasn't been able to join yet. I'm trying to walk her through it right now. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Let's go ahead and skip. Is Tom on here?
No, neither of them are on here. I'm trying to walk them through it right now. Sorry.
Okay, cool. That's all right. Thank you.
I'll just one thing, anyone that has questions, the way to submit those is through the Q&A box. So please go ahead and do it that way. We're not going to call on people individually. So it needs to be submitted in writing through the Q&A box. Thank you.
Hey, Catherine, I don't know if you're supposed to be talking right now, but it looks like you're on mute.
I did talk, but did you not hear me when I said the thing about the Q&A box?
I heard it, Catherine.
Okay.
All right. And just as a heads up, we've got Esther on and Sam both on the call now. Sorry for the technical issues, and again, appreciate everyone bearing with us.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, David.
Technology is great until it doesn't work. So no worries. Thanks again to our DOH staff who are able to join for this. I'll pass it over to Esther to talk about the limited equity co-op model.
So hi, I'm jumping straight in to talk about the limited equity cooperative. I can follow along right with the slide, but I'd rather keep it rather organic and share our experiences at DOH with LECs. Limited equity co-ops are a model of shared equity homeownership. I would equate it, for those that don't know what co-ops are, kind of like condo ownership, but the major difference is in a condo, you actually get a deed for your unit. So you own everything from the walls in a cooperative, you own shares of a corporation that owns the building. So that corporation is run like any other corporation, like Apple or Amazon or Microsoft, where it's a corporation that has shareholders. And so is a co-op. It's a cooperative corporation that has shareholders that gets certificates of ownership in the buildings, and their percentage of ownership of the building is commensurate with the size of their unit. So if you have a 3-bedroom unit, you might own a larger percentage in the corporation than a person with a 1-bedroom unit. But you are an owner, you have a say-so, and you have voting rights just like you would a condo. The major difference is that a cooperative has a board of directors that does the day-to-day governance of the corporation that owns the cooperative, but members do vote. So that's the major difference between the two. But it is an ownership model, and we try to promote that as a home ownership opportunity at DOH, just like we would do any other single family home ownership model. Depending on the specific model of the co-op, the process of buying and selling of shares is designed to mitigate market price increases. What this means is that when you buy a unit in a cooperative, you buy it at a certain price, but if you decide to sell that unit, you will only receive a certain percentage of return on your investment. For example, in some cases with a condo ownership, if you have, due to market forces, 100% increase in the value of your home, you can realize that at the sale. But with a limited equity co-op, you're only limited to a certain amount of increase so that the next person coming in to buy your unit can also take advantage of affordability. So there would be a regulatory agreement attached to the building and attached to your share ownership that would limit the amount of equity that you can build in your unit. So what are the goals of a limited equity co-op? It's to create permanent affordable housing, but that would be at an ownership level, not just a rental level. It encourages community wealth building because this is something that the household owns, so it could be passed down to their children or grandchildren and kept as, a way to grow wealth within a household. It also encourages neighborhood stability because when you understand that you own this unit, then that generally translates into greater care given to the property in general. It provides for a collective effort with the other owners in the building. Generally, that relates to general property management, general upkeep. We find that in an ownership model, people just generally care about where they live over other living options. Next slide. Or are we pausing for questions?
We can go ahead and cover this and then we can answer the questions at the end.
I'll turn it over to our ARO staff to cover the ARO concepts.
Great. Thanks, Esther. Hi, my name's Sam. I'm with the ARO team. So basically just going to review this slide, a lot of text. And again, we'll be happy to answer questions in more development, in more detail later. But so the market rate component here, you must be delivered 25% of ARO units on site. So first requirement, 25% of all units are going to be on site. The remaining 75% of your ARO compliance can be achieved in different ways. We're basically want to be very, very clear about one thing is that what we're talking about here is $1 land. And that's the only subsidy we're talking about for ARO. Just the land is going to be $1. There are other options below. You can use donation tax credits. You can do ARO investment with the market rate component to the LEC component, like we've described previously. But basically, you're going to have to give 100%, 25% of the units on site, and then this remaining 75% can be achieved off-site, a mix of off-site, on-site, or in lieu, and we can describe that in more detail at a later time. I think that's the gist I want to get. Otherwise, I get really into kind of granular details, and I'd be happy to do that in one-on-one conversations.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we worked with our DOH staff just to make sure that we kind of understood the logistics of what ARO compliance would look like and what the low equity housing component would look like, and all the logistics of that for this potential development concept. And so we just wanted to kind of drill down there into that. Oh, yes, Esther?
I did want to add, along with the homeownership option, when the developer seeks to then sell these co-ops to qualified households, the single family home ownership division does have mechanisms by which to support the households with first time home buyer support. However, we do not have a mechanism for households to like secure mortgages. But our first time home buyer support does allow for a certain percentage of the purchase price to be used as a grant to purchase the home.
Thanks for clarifying that. And so zooming back out, we have our set listing price. We are looking for the development to include the 20 to 40 low equity co-op units, but you could get way more units on site than that. We'd be excited about maybe a mixed use concept right on Howard Street with that, the remainder of those units above ground floor commercial, those that weren't being used in the low equity co-op. And so we imagine that could make the opportunity site for the market rate component on Howard if it was separated, which we assume it would be from the low equity co-op component. Then it would still need to meet the ARO like Sam was describing. And so there's a few ways that could be done depending on whether your units are on site or off site. And so on exactly the execution of that compliance. And so I know that's really technical, but we will answer questions in just a second. And for those of you who are interested in submitting an application to buy this property, applications are due on January 3rd of 2025. This property was listed back on October 1st. So it's a little over 90 days. And, it's pretty complicated, lots of moving parts. And so we will understand that, but we are asking for a few things up front. These include a detailed site plan, a detailed project description. It doesn't have to include unit mix assumptions, but we'll ask for that later if it doesn't. A detailed project budget, or sorry, not detailed, but a preliminary project budget, your purchase offer, and then ideally some sort of visualization of the design proposed, because as I mentioned before, compliance with the neighborhood design guidelines is important, as this would be on, right up on a prominent commercial corridor. That isn't technically a required submittal item. And so again, we would ask for that after submission if it wasn't provided up front. But the way that our land sale review works is, we have our deadline for the initial application submittal. We review what you all submit. Then we will have clarifying questions and may request additional submittal information if we need it to understand how it's going to fulfill the community's objectives and goals for this piece of land. Then we'll select a preferred buyer. We'll go through the environmental clearance. We do like background research, and then it would enter the legislative process, ultimately culminating hopefully in city council approval, because ultimately we need city council approval to sell our land. So with that being said, I have two questions in the Q&A portal. If anyone else has questions, go ahead and throw those in, but we'll get started with answering those. So
sorry, Danielle, can I also just say, this is your opportunity to ask questions. This is now an open application period. And so we are not allowed to talk to you outside of this meeting. So now is the time to get your questions answered about this application. Again, we cannot talk to you about the specifics of your proposal until after we have done our evaluation.
Okay, so the first from Bill is, would the co-op be the lower density housing box shown on the diagram, and what affordability mix is assumed or preferred for the building along Howard? So going back to that conceptual project, so yes, the low density housing piece would be the co-op component, and then the higher density housing piece we're assuming would be market rate with the ARO compliance. And so at least a small portion of the units in the market rate building would have to be subsidized per the ARO ordinance. Some of those might be offsite or pay in lieu fee instead, but they would have to comply with the ARO, which like high level is the equivalent of like 20% affordable at 80% AMI, but my DOH friends are gonna jump in if I said that wrong. Okay, the next question is there a name for the first time home buyer support program? Esther, are you able to speak to that?
Sure, we have two programs. One is aptly named First Time Home Buyer Program, and that's just the name of it. And it has an application associated with it. But the other program is called the Tax Smart Program. Both of these programs can be accessed at our City of Chicago Department of Housing website. It also includes purchase price maximums and area median income qualification maximum, which is 80% of AMI. We have other programs that are associated with standalone single-family housing that has different criteria, but that's not going to apply in this particular case. So as we develop this RFP more, we'll have more information available, but our purchase price maximums are around the 250 mark in support and overall, and they're capped at 80%. So as your development teams are taking this into consideration, you can use those limits that we have posted on our website as a rule of thumb. I'll caveat that by saying, in no indication am I suggesting that you should use the maximums as a price point for the sale of the units. That those just indicate our maximums. We want these to be as affordable as possible.
Thank you. So the next question is, if an organization came forward with a proposal for building only the lower density LEC, low equity co-op housing on the site, would that proposal be considered? Yes, it would be. There may be proposals that do not fully fit our selection criteria. That's why we went over all of those like general application consideration selection criteria, as well as the project specific one. Yes, we may receive proposals that are not this exactly, and we expect that. The next question is, you mentioned this will be developed further. What additional information or changes are anticipated with this offering? So we came up with the development concept. I know this is a little confusing, but we came up with this development concept to show, okay, on an acre, is it feasible that the things we're asking for could fit? And what would that look like? And we assumed that there would be a market rate housing component because there's a demand for more housing in the neighborhood, but also we understand that like that is financially going to probably work out more easily than the low equity housing component. And so we thought that this, and then also understanding that there's the garden component. So we thought that overall this concept could be feasible, but that's not to say that there aren't other concepts that would also be feasible that a developer might be interested in. And so we will have to receive any proposals and review those against our criteria before really sharing any more details around what will happen on the site. Give it just another minute. We'll say thank you all for coming to this. We're excited to see people be interested in this property, probably from perspectives, though our target audience are interested developers and development teams. So we appreciate you taking the time. All right, next question. May you share more about the community garden piece? How will the garden meet the needs of the current garden on the addresses, food access, biodiversity, etc.? So We're just focusing today on the solicitation that we have out right now for the property sale and the selection criteria. So I think that that falls outside of the scope of this meeting. But I encourage you to either reach out to us or the ward office if you would like to discuss that. Thank you. Thank you all for your time and look forward to seeing any applications that you submit. Like Catherine said, we can't really discuss project specifics after this. If you have logistical issues with the Shy Block Builder application to the city about that, that's once applications are received. Okay, we got 2 more. How much leeway could be given to restructuring the rights of way bordering the east and west of the site? Interesting. We have not really looked into that.
You can propose whatever creative ideas you have, and we're willing to entertain them.
Last question. It was mentioned this is our only time to ask questions. To clarify, there will not be a way to ask any questions further through general email, or should we work directly with the ward office? So yeah, we can't workshop your proposals with you because that would be unfair. There will be, more structured time for that. Should you submit an application? And so if it's like a procedural question, like you're like, oh, I can't submit my application, you can reach out to us on that, but we won't be able to workshop your proposal in private because everyone has to have the same access to information. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Appreciate it.